Yeah, and so one of the joys of the internet is that we can actually do these things and connect. And one of the joys of the internet at this point in time is that we can use this forum to share and give you some of the language that we use around the concept of being prophetic. So Courtney joined me, I think it's 12 months ago. I was doing a Lana Vorsa Facebook Live thing, and she contacted me afterwards and said, hey, what on earth is this thing called prophetic mentoring, and can I be a part of that? And through a series of conversations, we decided that's a good thing to do. And so she did it. And ever since then, as in most people who do the prophetic mentoring with me, just gained heaps of great relationships from all over the world. And Courtney, you and Scott are definitely one of those brilliant relationships that the Father has blessed and placed in my life. Yeah. And so a couple of weeks ago, Courtney sent me a message and said, hey, how about we do a Facebook Live and on the concepts of dreams and visions. Now, I'm only in this world doing Facebook Lives through Lana Vorsa normally, so I've never actually run one until this point in time. And so we decided to just jump in, boots and all, and just see what the Father's going to do and speak through us. And so today we're talking about dreams and visions. And Courtney is one of those humans that dreams a lot.
A lot. It was actually through a dream. I had a dream about something, and it was through the dream that the Lord told me to step out and contact you, because I had heard about the prophetic mentoring and had toyed with the idea. And it was through a dream I woke up and the Lord was, do it, contact Matt and get going on it. And it's been such a blessing ever since. And dreams are definitely one of those ways that the Lord has used in my life to meet me in a season that was really, really difficult. My night seasons were absolutely horrible. I was wrecked with anxiety, and many nights would wake up and spend chunks of the night awake, unable to go back to sleep. And during that time, as I was praying over my sleep, I started sleeping better, but I also started dreaming more. And so the Lord took something that was really a real challenge, something that was very difficult for me, and has turned it into such an avenue of blessing and meeting and fellowship place with him, like he does with a lot of things in life. So yes, he's so good.
Yep, I'd forgotten all about that. But that's again, the Father speaks in so many different ways. And if you've heard me speak on Lana Vorsa or even at my own church, you will know that I look for the Father's voice in lots of different avenues in life. Being raised in the Baptist church that I have been, the Bible has always been extraordinarily important to me and still is to this very day. And I love the concept of the language that is used. I love understanding and unpacking both the Greek and Hebrew concepts of some of the words that have been used. And I love understanding the wealth and the value that's in there. Mm-hmm. What I do enjoy also, though, is finding the Father's voice in a whole heap of other areas. And in this area of dream interpretation, it's been something that I've been in for, well, it's a generation, because my father started this work back in the 90s. And very soon afterwards, through a divine encounter myself, I was drawn into this ministry of deliverance and healing prayer through a healing of my own. And through that, and hundreds or thousands of people that we've been ministering to since, understanding and interpreting dreams and visions has been something we've done on a regular basis. In the prophetic mentoring course that I do, Courtney, that this concept is something that I teach. And I believe that dream interpretation is something for every person on the planet. I was told the other day that it's just my thing, and as like, cool, I'm glad it's just my thing. Yeah, right. But the concept is through the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, the Father's always said that he's going to speak through dreams. And I think it's wise to understand them. And so today we're going to unpack some of the concepts of those dreams. There's all different kinds of dreams that we're going to be looking at. And what we're hoping is, if this is something that people find helpful, in the coming weeks, we might even jump back on board next week and do another one.
You've already opened us up with the fact that, yes, God does still speak today through dreams and visions. But one of the big questions that I had at the beginning when we first started was, is there a difference between a dream and a vision? do you consider them to be separate, two different things, or do you consider them to be kind of one and the same?
So that's a great question. One of the statements I love to be able to say is you only get answers if you ask questions. And in a ministry like this, there are always lots of questions. And so firstly, I welcome questions. And again, it doesn't mean that I've got all the answers, but what it does mean is you've got a place to actually ask the question. Having done this ministry for as long as I've been doing it, there are a lot of wisdom that I've gained in it. And part of the passion I have for my own life is to pass that wisdom on now and through formats like these. But the question is, what's the difference? And it's a great question because a dream and a vision, the way that you interpret them are very, very similar, if not the same, because it's the same metaphors, the same colors, the same images. It's more the language that differs between the two. And so with a vision, often when you have a vision, you're actually interacting with the concept of understanding the story that's flowing out there in front of you. Whereas a dream is a little bit different. Now, 99 times out of 100, a person, before they tell me a dream, they will say, Matt, I've had a weird dream.
Yes.
Now, you've probably said that too, right, Courtney?
I did. And I was telling you earlier, I said, I've never had someone come to me with a question about a dream or needing an interpretation on something that has said I had a completely normal dream. There was nothing weird about it. So if you come to me and say I've had a very normal dream, I'm going to say that's a little weird.
Yep. Perfect.
Yes.
So the concept for me, the weirdness of dreams is normal. And so if weirdness can be normal, then the things that occur in it can be understood and unpacked. When someone says to me they've had a weird dream, what they're really hoping is I'm not going to hear that dream and go, wow, you're a nut job, or
you're
something,
yeah.
You're weird. And so often if a person's unsure about sharing it, they'll be a little bit nervous about passing on the information. And so when the first time a person comes and shares a dream with you, often they'll just give you the greatest hits of that dream and hope that you're going to deal well with that. When they see that you can do that, they might then open up and give to you more. But the phrase that I use around dream language is it's an unscripted language. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by being an unscripted language is that like when you tell a story, you take a timeline or a series of events and you put it together, but a dream can happen from all different places. So in one dream, you might be 5 years old, but things that are actually happening today are actually happening in that dream. And so your brain's going, that's just weird. I'm 5 years old, but I'm actually inside of this dream, but it might be pointing to something of the future. That's because your subconscious is always at work. Your brain is always functioning. And to understand dreams, dream science is a really cool thing to get your brain around as well, quite literally. But inside of the dream science that we have is an understanding that the brain is constantly at work. Now, why dreams are weird is because things from your past are in your subconscious, things from your present are in your subconscious, and also things from your future. On top of that, God uses that environment to speak, and often Satan will try and use that environment to steal, kill, and destroy, which is why they are weird. And that's why at times our dreams don't seem to make any logical sense. And so we go, they're weird. I've just had a weird dream. It might have been last night's pizza. It could have been that I was watching that movie last night and it just gave me weird dreams. And we try and find all different understandings, and it could all be true. But you only understand that by expressing the dream. So for me, a dream is a sleep state moment. A vision is an awake state moment. Okay. There's a slight difference in Acts when you have Peter going into a trance. And that was when he was so hungry. I don't know if you've ever been that hungry, Courtney.
Not yet.
Not yet. That you've fallen into a trance. And in that trance is, you remember when Jesus dropped down from the heavens, all those animals that he's like, I'm not eating that.
Yeah.
And in that one moment of trance-like state where it's kind of this half sleep, half wake moment, Jesus drops on Peter, what I declare clean, let no one declare unclean. And it became a verse that throughout eternity in my own life, it speaks into who I am. So there's different kinds of expressions of visions and dreams and trances, but the way that we handle them and interpret them are quite similar.
Okay. Well, and that leads me into my next question, which is every dream from God? And like, what if, you mentioned pizza dreams. So how do you know if a dream is from God? So is every dream from him? And how do you know if it is from him for sure or not?
Sure. And I think I probably get asked that question more often than not in each of the groups that I run, or people who want to share a dream with me. Because people have a language around this is a God dream or this is not a God dream. This is a dream of the flesh is what people will say. I'm not going to sort of get into an argument as to which is what, but what I do believe is that God speaks through everything.
Yeah.
And when I say everything, I mean everything. And so if you go to the New Testament, Jesus is riding into Jerusalem on the back of a donkey, and the Pharisees come to Jesus and say, hey, stop the people from praising you. This is not cool and not to be done. And Jesus says, well, if I stop them from praising me, the very rocks are going to start singing. Now, I've not heard a singing rock yet, but if Jesus wants to declare that over something that a rock can sing, then far be it from me to actually speak against that, right? And so I think God can speak through everything. And so when you have a dream, there's a story that's going on inside of you that the Father can speak through if we choose to listen to it. Now, let me just put some understanding around that sort of concept as well, too, because there are times, and I remember one time when I was in my 20s, I had a dream where I went to heaven. And I stood inside of heaven. And to this day, I can still remember it as if it happened last night. It was so profound and so unusually amazing that I just knew that there was no shadow of a doubt the Father was all over that. And Satan had no way of actually trying to steal, kill, and destroy that other than through my own unbelief of saying it's just a dream.
Yeah.
But in all of our dream spaces, like we have things like nightmares and good dreams and all that sort of stuff. It's helping you understand the thread of what God is saying. Now, take the Bible, for example. We believe that God speaks through all of it, every part of it. The Bible says it's all inspired. But I can guarantee you not a whole lot of people spend time in Leviticus.
Not for long, at least.
Yep. I wasn't either until I turned 50 last year, that's the verse that I'm living with, that this is the year of freedom that I've been declaring since last October. And look what's actually happening. We've had bushfires, we've had floods, we've now had a pandemic. And I'm still declaring that it's a year of freedom from what the Father is saying. So I believe the Father is speaking through all things, and therefore the dreams and visions that you're having, he is speaking through it. The challenge for us is to listen. And I think that challenge was the same challenge that the Father placed on the disciples when Jesus was on the planet. This is my beloved Son, listen for him. Okay, and Jesus just didn't use words to speak or to teach or help people understand. He used divine miracles. He did use sermons. He used things of just the smallest thing of getting down on the ground and playing with the dirt and the dust. All of these kinds of things that Jesus took hold of to help us understand and to grow in our knowledge of hearing his voice. And dreams is that thing. So in Joel, it talks about in the end days, men and women are going to be prophesying, having dreams and having visions. The day of Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit landed on the disciples there in Jerusalem, you'll know that the Apostle Peter got out the Bible again and just said, in the book of Joel, it's actually written that these things are going to happen, that dreams and visions are going to be had by God's people. And I think that this is the concept for us to go, okay, if I'm dreaming, I'm just going to err on the side that God's speaking. And I've discovered that every time I err on the side of God speaking, he's speaking.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that leads me to my next question, which is a little bit of a shift in a more difficult direction. A lot of people also ask, what about nightmares? Like, if the Father has access to this spiritual or this realm of dreams, what happens when we have a nightmare? What does that mean for hearing the Father through that type of dream, something that can be very traumatic or very scary?
Yeah. And that's an excellent question. And that's one of the questions I get asked each time as well.
Yeah.
Nightmares, and I actually don't usually use the language of nightmare. The language I use around a nightmare is it's an unfinished story. It's an unfinished story because you wake up in the trauma of the moment. And let me take a couple of minutes just to unpack some of this stuff so that people understand where I'm getting from. So nightmares, reoccurring nightmares, particularly reoccurring ones. They're like, there's a spot in your spirit, like a record player, an old record, if you're old enough to have records from the 80s and the 90s, you know, when you've got a scratch in it. And the
80s are the best.
80s are the best.
Stick with the 80s.
Yeah, we could do another Facebook Live just on 80s
we could.
music.
We might later.
And how God is speaking through 80s music. But the concept is there's something that's actually gone wrong inside of our world at a point in time, and we get stuck in a reoccurring dream. What we've discovered through dream interpretation is helping a person unpack a recurring dream allows them not only to understand it, but to see how the Father wants that dream to finish. And that's why I call it an unfinished dream, because you wake up in the trauma. Brain science will tell you that when you are sleeping, your brain literally can't tell the difference as to whether the trauma is physically happening to you or not. And so when you wake up in a trauma of an abuse or a hurt or something, it's because like you feel like your body's gone through the emotions of that actual trauma. So with my kids, like I've got 3 kids, they're all adults now, and I wished I had known this stuff when my kids were younger. Because what would happen is one of my kids would wake up in the middle of the night, they'd come in, they say, "Daddy, I've had a bad dream." And I did the worst thing at that moment that I could have possibly done. I just said, "Go back to sleep. It's just a dream. It's just a dream." Now, what I'm doing at that point is I'm negating what they've gone through. I'm negating the trauma of what they've gone through. Quite often in the room that they're in is the place where they've gone through that trauma in their dreams, and I'm sending them back into that place. And it quite literally breaks my heart for the amount of times that it was just like, just go back to bed. It was just a dream. And so I devalue that dream space. I devalue that imagination. I devalue what's been going on in their life. What I should have done, and this is what I share with parents all the time these days, is if your child wakes you up in the middle of the night, suck it up and get up. Sit on the bed with them and say, "Hey, tell me the dream." In the very act of listening to somebody telling a person a dream is an act of intimacy. And that's another thing. If you just put a little note there, Courtney, I'll come back to that in a second. But to listen to the child's dream is to value the voice of the child and allow them to express what's actually happened inside of that place. In doing that, you're giving them a safe place, and which is love, and a healing place or a safe place heals. So you're drawing your child on the side of the bed with you to speak out the trauma, to speak out the dream, and let's just talk about that. And so what I then do is encourage people to use their imagination to finish the dream with the concept and the addition of Jesus. And so I'd say to a child or even an adult, what would happen if Jesus came into the dream? Can you use your imagination to find Jesus in the dream? And I'll give them no concept of where Jesus is to turn up. So he could turn up at the start. He could turn up in the middle. He could turn up at the end. But I'm allowing the child or the adult to use their imagination to engage with the concept of Jesus inside the dream. And so what happens is we've found this 100% of the time, is that when Jesus turns up, his character is always seen. So he always redeems. He always restores. He always makes places of safety. And so if a child wakes up and says, "Daddy, there's a bad man in my room," and if Daddy's gone into that room and there's no bad men, we're going to come back and we're actually going to talk about, okay, what does Jesus do inside of that space? Right. So Jesus will come back into the room and the child will go, "Oh, okay, Jesus handcuffed the man." "Oh, okay. What did Jesus do with the man?" "There's a police car out the front and Jesus took him out and put him in the police car and away it went." And so to the child, "So is there anything bad in the room now?" "No." "Where's Jesus?" "Oh, he's actually sitting on my bed." Get up, emotional saying it. But these are real things that have happened inside of the dream space, which will bring healing and restoration for our children. And if you can do it for your children, you can actually do it for you. And so when someone contacts me and says, "Man, I've had a nightmare and I can't get past this, and this is really stuck into my spirit and I don't understand it," I will invite them to invite Jesus into that moment. What would Jesus do? And again, when you're using your imagination, you're not telling Jesus what to do. You're asking and inviting Jesus to do what he does best. Yeah. Jesus knows the solution of this problem way better than I do. Yeah. And what happens is, and so often we see children just going back to sleep because they know that Christ is there they've seen him, they've seen what he can do, and now they're at peace, and now that they can rest. And so the concept of nightmares, this is what I encourage. The language around it's an unfinished story actually disempowers some of the fear that's actually involved with it.
Yeah.
So I wake up, it's an unfinished story. Okay, let's get Jesus to come into that moment and let's see what Jesus does. And now often when we're half awake, half asleep anyway, we can actually engage with our sleep space nearly straight away. But you'll find that the more that you do this, the more familiar Christ becomes inside of your dreams, and you'll actually start seeing your dream space become more and more of places of victory and overcoming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will attest that is very, very helpful. And that is something that I've learned from you, because I'm a mom of 4 kids. And so this is not something that like we're far removed from. We had our oldest come in late one night, and he was very upset. He'd had a very scary dream, and we did our best we sat and talked him through it and tried to, like you said, logically step things out. And then it dawned on me, hey, Courtney, invite Jesus into this space. And so I just said, okay, close your eyes. Let's ask Jesus, where is he? Where do you see him? And he started laughing and he started smiling, and he said, I see him, and he's knocking all the bad guys down and they're totally gone. And he was like, okay, Mom, piece of cake, it's done. I'm going to bed now. And he just ran out of the room. And I thought, man, I wish I had done that from the very beginning. It would have saved us maybe 30 minutes, which is precious time when you have 4 children, 30 minutes of sleep. But it's our children don't have a junior Jesus. They don't have a junior Holy Spirit. And so it's, I think that's actually for me and my kids, one of the most powerful ways of teaching them how to see the Lord in their everyday walk is by instructing them, okay, ask him. Let's invite him into that space, and let's have him do, like you said, show his character, do what he does, because he's always good. Okay. So you wanted us to come back around to the act of listening to a dream is an act of intimacy.
Yeah.
And I think that's so profound, and that's so true, because our dreams are very personal. They are given, or that you are the only one experiencing them at that moment. So to be able to open up and share through that place of vulnerability it's a pretty big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah. It's a very big deal, and it should never be underestimated as well. Mm-hmm. What people fear most at times is being judged.
Yeah.
Okay. Like we said at the start, and we kind of joked around the concept of weirdness, but people, and none of us like being judged. And so I guess part of our anxiety of what's to come as well is what's going to happen if something goes wrong. What are people going to think or say? I often have people sitting with me in my office for ministry, just going, what's going to happen if I actually share this vulnerably? Or what's going to happen if I say that? Well, the fear is telling you to run away, but the truth is telling you there's freedom here. It might be challenging, but there's freedom here. One of the things that we've stumbled upon with sharing dreams, and I quite literally mean stumbled upon, when you share a dream with another person, you're opening your heart in a way that you're inviting them to be very gentle with who you are. Mm-hmm. Anytime you do that with anyone, the act of listening draws a person into a place of intimacy. And as they come into that place of intimacy, the relationship grows. It just grows. It grows powerfully very quickly. And so these prophetic mentoring things that I do, as you know, Courtney, the relationships inside of these rooms, even if they're around the planet, rapidly increase as people share their dreams. And so if you think of people inside of your life right now, the ones that you trust to share your dreams with, they are most likely the people who are closest to you in life. Now, in your communities of people, whether that be wherever you are, let's just say, for example, at church, we often don't go to church and go, hey, I've had a dream, can you help me with it? We go to church and we're all dressed up and we're looking good. And how are you going today, Courtney? I'm going great, fantastic. The kids are all clean. Look at that. We're all good. Mostly. Yeah. And so it's this concept that we don't allow people into that place. But when you're sitting in a room with a bunch of people, and so when I do these prophetic mentoring, as you know, there's only a few people there. As people start sharing their dreams, the intimacy literally manifests itself right there. And vulnerability becomes a very safe thing to do, because everyone knows that there is no condemnation inside of those rooms. And so again, whatever you share, whatever you say, my opinion of you will not change. I have a very high opinion of you, is what I tell people when I first meet them, and that will only increase as vulnerability and intimacy grow in a concept of relationship. The challenge we've had with some of this language as well is allowing people to stay in those places. So they do this course with me for a few weeks, and then they go back to church environments which don't have this language. And again, if you're not speaking the language of a culture, sooner or later it disappears. And so I can guarantee you there are people around you right now that are itching to share their dreams, but they're wondering whether it's a safe place to do. But you'll discover as you share them, intimacy just increases. Mm-hmm. There was one time I was invited to go to a church here in Sydney, and I was to do a message on dream interpretation. And they asked me inside of the message whether I could ask for volunteers to share a dream in the church, like someone to share a dream, and I had to interpret it. Now, okay, that's all well and good, but you need a person to come forward and go, I'm up for this. And so when I got to that time, I said, well, the pastor's asked if I would do this. And anyway, one fella stood up, and I'd not met him before. I didn't know who he was. And he just pours out this dream. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting at the front of this church just going, either this guy is really known by this church, or anyway, he allowed me into that place. Mm-hmm. What happened is a whole community of people championed this dude, like absolutely got on board. And when I interpreted the dream, they're like, you don't know this guy, but you've just said who this guy's identity is. And it's just because I've started to learn to understand what the metaphors are, the colors mean. Mm-hmm. And you can speak that back into being. And what we found in that church to this very day, there is an intimacy over that church, which I enjoy going back to every single time. Even when they change pastors, the intimacy of the DNA of the church stayed the same. And again, it's that intimacy and vulnerability that comes from listening to someone who's willing to share their dreams with you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's very profound too. And we're going to come back to this here in a minute when we talk about testing what it is that we're hearing and seeing within our dreams and visions. But I want to come back to this place here for just a minute and ask you, where do you begin when, let's say you've had a dream or you've had a vision? What is it a little bit of your process? What does that look like as you begin to interpret or open up a dream for understanding with the Father? Where do you start?
Yep. So where I start is the same as with it's the same way that I do any kind of interpretation, whether I'm doing it on vision, whether I'm doing it even on the Bible, if I can say that, is I look for a theme. And so if I'm reading the story of David and Goliath, I'm looking for the theme. And so often we look for the theme of overcoming in that sort of concept. So there's a theme in it. If you shared with me the story of the woman who broke the alabaster jar on Jesus' feet, there's this beautiful concept of love overwhelming condemnation. There's themes all the way through it. So a dream, even in its unscripted language and story, has a theme. And so the first question I ask people is, what is the theme of your dream? And it's funny because it rhymes, but it sticks in your brain. And so what's the theme of the dream is a very helpful thing to start with. So even if you don't understand all the nuances or the metaphors or some weird little white mouse that's just turned up in this dream and you go, I have no idea why that white mouse is there and that's just weird. It's just ignoring all that for the moment is to look for the theme. Now, the second thing is context. Context is always vitally important with dreams. See, dream interpretation, it's not a science that you can get the same outcome from every metaphor, because dreams are so personal to a person. And so when they share it, I'm asking them what part of that are they connecting to, or what part of that are they relating to, and how does their story go in sync with this concept of the dream. So I'm looking for context. I'm looking for how old they are. So are you the age that you are today, Courtney, is something I've asked you, and that probably a number of times. And I think with us, Courtney, you've gone back to times when you were younger, and we've unpacked some of that stuff. And then there's times of the future and you go, well, okay, I can unpack some of that stuff as well. So context is vitally important. So once I've found the theme and I've understood the context, the way that I listen for God, and again, this is something that I teach in prophetic mentoring, whether it's in dream interpretation, in looking for God in creation or the Bible, is that when God speaks to me, I always look for an encouragement and I always look for a challenge.
Yes.
We are in a season in the church where we only love to hear good words. And it's that concept of good word, great word, fantastic word. And that's usually because we've received an affirming word. It's something that's gone, yep, that's who you are. And you go, yep, that's an affirmation. The way we go, it's a good word. What we're light on the ground with is challenging words. And this is one of the reasons I love linking in with people like Lana and who love to share what the Father's placed on. And I just love some of the concepts that she brings out in that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So the concept of the challenge inside of a dream, when God challenges you, it's never to condemn you. It's never to destroy you. It's always to grow you. So in the Old Testament, iron sharpens iron. So a friend sharpens a friend. When the Father speaks, there's a challenge inside of there that grows you. And so again, so I look for a theme, then I go, okay, what's the encouragement in that theme? What am I pulling out of that? The Father's just going, yep, I'm all over this and well done. And then there's another part of it where he's challenging me to say, well, there's an area here maybe of unbelief, fear, something to do with my past that he's wanting to unpack. Or, you know, that phrase in the Bible, plowing up the hard ground of your heart. Awesome metaphor if you're a farmer, not so much if you're not. And inside of that, when the Father is dealing with your fear or your unbelief, what he's doing is plowing up that hard ground so that deeper seed can be sown into that place. And so I'm looking for an encouragement and a challenge. The last thing that I always do is any dream, I ask people to self-reflect on it first. Mm-hmm. And so Courtney, even if you tell me you had a dream about your husband like Scott, I would be asking you, what would that look like if you were the person that you're dreaming about? Now, it kind of sounds weird, but often in our dream space, there's things that are manifesting of character traits or of what we're going through as well. Now, let me just give you a funny concept of that. For years, people have come to me and said, I've been dreaming about my pastor and I think I'm supposed to marry him, or, and that's weird if he's already married, but
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know what they're asking for in that point in time. But anyway, there was one particular church where I got a bunch of people from that church coming to me for ministry, and they all kept saying they're having this dream about their pastor they're going to marry. And I'm thinking, well, I'm pretty sure he can't marry 10 women. And so I started searching the Lord on that. And what I found is that often people in authority in our lives, like pastors or teachers or leaders, they're the Jesus figures of our lives where we look up. And so in our dream space, we're manifesting what Jesus may look like because we may not have seen him or know him, and we see him as our pastor. So when someone comes to me in my own church and says, Matt, I've had a dream about you, we can have a joke about that initially, but what we talk about is what is Jesus doing and bringing into that moment. Okay, right. So that's kind of the thing. So I look for the theme, and I think that's very important to understand that. I look for the context, then I look for an encouragement and a challenge on that, and then I'm self-reflecting on it. Then I guess the last bit is just then working out the details of the dream as well. And I know that time is sort of running away from us a bit here, Courtney, so it might be something that we can do a bit more of and unpack in the next time that we're a part of this. But it's again, it's those nuancy bits of metaphor and vision and reality that we're seeing inside of our dreams, like little white mice that turn up or something like that. It's helping people understand what the color means and what that might be bringing into that environment.
Okay. Yeah, that's fantastic. So we're going to shift gears a little bit because we are running out of time. I know we have a lot more questions that we wrote out that we wanted to get to that we're not going to get to this time, but hopefully next time we will get to that. So we're going to move on and we're going to do a little bit of rapid fire here with Matt. And I'm just going to shout out or list out some common themes that often show up in dreams. The ones that, a lot of us have probably dreamed about at some point and thought, I wonder what on earth that means. We're just going to give you guys just some quick guidelines on what some of those things might be showing you or leading you, what direction they might be leading you. So the first one I want to ask you about, Matt, is losing teeth. What on earth does that mean?
So let me put just a little disclaimer on this one as well. Context is really important with all of these things as well. And so if you disagree with something that I'm saying, let me just say that we can still be friends, right? Like for everyone watching, if you don't agree with some of the things that I'm saying, it doesn't mean we can't do relationship. Let's talk about teeth. So again, we talk general terms and we talk these sort of understandings. So when someone's losing their teeth in a dream, it's usually they have a fear of public speaking, or they're going to be made to look like a fool if they start speaking. So I was surprised I didn't have a teeth falling out dream last night, knowing that I was about to do this. But that's the concept of our teeth. We can't keep our teeth in our mouth. So if we open our mouth, we're going to look like a fool with everything falling out and falling out of place.
Okay. Number 2, falling or flying. Let's do both of those, falling and flying.
Falling means that there's something that's completely out of control. So there, you have no place to stand from, you have nothing to reach out for, and you know that you're at the mercy of gravity or the laws of nature or the laws of the kingdom of God or whatever that is. But if you're falling, often that's in a nightmare state because you don't know what's going to happen at the end of it. And if you call it a nightmare, it's usually because you think you're going to die at the end of that. But being that you woke up, you didn't. So we can now unpack. Yeah, it's good. It's always good. Flying is a different one. Flying is you're soaring. So Isaiah 40, it's the concept of mounting up on the wings of an eagle. We often find people with leadership on their lives, a calling or a gifting on leadership, that they're often flying. And so they're lifted higher to see further.
Okay. All right. Going on a trip or traveling on a large airplane, boat, or within a car.
Okay, so vehicles are very important and often dreamt about a lot. And again, vision dreams very similar in their understanding. Cars, often people dream about traveling in a car, which is their own person and identity. It's what the Father has placed you in to get from point A to point B. So it often has a bunch to do with your own personal identity. And so I'm asking the person about the color, the shape. I've actually done an activation on the Haverfield Baptist Church website about using vehicles. If you haven't done that yet, you can do that. And we do interact with those sorts of things as well. We love doing that. That's what we call fun. And so as it gets bigger, we start having bigger communities of people that we're moving with. We often see pastors who dream about driving buses, which is small communities of people that they're moving from A to B. As the church gets bigger, we have trains. And so it's a fixed destination. When you get onto a larger church, you know the direction they're going in. And it's very difficult to change the direction, but you know where they've gone to. It's tried and true. And planes, it's like you're lifting off in the kingdom of God as well with a community of people. Ships, again, the bigger the vessel, often the bigger community that you're actually connecting with. And so this translates not just to churches, but it could be to business, it could be to community groups or schools. And again, ships are, again, tough to turn. But again, it's that sort of thing. If you're going to be a part of a community of that size, you just got to know that that's a thing and that's part of their strength. Some people call it their weakness. I don't. I just think it's a part of how the Father places together His brilliant kingdom.
Right. Okay. Snakes.
Snakes. Again, context is really
not positive.
Yep, but snakes are lies, and often it goes straight back to Genesis 3. Where Eve got spoken to by a talking snake. And I always humorously say to people, we don't talk to talking snakes, we tread on them. But it's helping a person unpack what the actual snake is telling them. And usually that's the lie that Satan is using to steal, kill, and destroy in their lives.
Right. Now, this next one, when I was there in Australia with you guys, I dreamed about dinosaurs one night, a lot of them. So what do you have to say about dinosaurs?
Dinosaurs, yep, and they're ancient creatures as well. It's strangely here in Australia because crocodiles and whatnot are still in that dinosaur kind of thing. And so for our Indigenous culture, it's actually quite an interesting concept as well. And any Indigenous culture around the world, like alligators and crocodiles and lizards and even dragons at point in some parts of Asia, are very important in their own dream understanding in space as well. That's why I say context is really important. Right. But dinosaurs, for people who aren't connected to the land per se in that way, show that God has been doing something for many generations inside of your world. the Father has been preparing this since the dawn of time when the dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Okay, now we're going to shift a little bit and go over to colors, because colors can often be used. You can pull things from colors, both positive and negative. So let's start with the color red. Let's have you tell us what a positive connotation of seeing a color red, something colored red, and then a negative connotation of what it might represent.
Yep. And again, you'll hear me pretext this all the time of context is very important, understanding that. So if a person's favorite color is red, then we unpack that first.
Right.
But the concept of red in dreams and visions now, like there's lots of resources that you can go to online. Like the Divinity Code is one of those exhaustive works that, and Courtney's got it right there.
I'll be backwards, but that's generally what it looks like.
Yep, and it's awesome. And so there's lots of resources that you can get. So for me, and when you're here, when I say for me, it's what I've seen and developed and grown, and it's something that we're developing our own resource as well for the things that we're doing. But red in a good version is the sacrificial love of Christ. We connect that with his blood. And so when we see the color red, we're talking about the sacrificial love of God. Often when we see it as a negative point of view, we see abuse. Mm-hmm. So it's, again, abuse attacks that place of life and seeks to kill and destroy. And so often you see what Satan is doing is trying to mirror what the Father is doing in a poor form of it. And often, as we all know, people will mask abuse as if it's love. Yeah. That's probably a whole session on itself, that one there.
Probably so. Okay, one more color, and then we'll jump into our last little activation here. So yellow.
Yeah, yellow. So in a difficult conversation, that's usually because something is unclean. And so when I say it's unclean, Satan has convinced you of a lie that you are unclean, because as you heard me say earlier, what Christ has declared clean, let no one declare unclean. But often when we do something wrong and we feel guilt or shame, it's that yellow color that often is presenting and seen. In the opposite, though, we're looking at the glory of God. And so, when the sun comes up and we see those rays come across, we just go, wow, there's the glory of God that's actually been seen and it's there. Yeah.
Fantastic. I feel like we could spend all evening talking just about symbols and things like that alone. But now what we're going to do is we're actually going to show you guys, give a little bit of a demonstration of what it looks like for Matt and I, and a lot of people that have gone through the prophetic mentoring classes, what it looks like to unpack a dream within community. So I will be actually sharing a dream that Matt has not heard before, which is kind of a rarity for us. So we'll go ahead and get into it. So I dreamed that I was pregnant, which is not an uncommon dream for me within the last couple of months. But in this dream, I was pregnant with two babies. One, and they were both apparently conceived at different times. And there was a lot of concern in the dream about how I was going to be able to have these babies without one hurting the other, since one would be ready to be born before the other. And I remember going to this group of doctors and saying, I don't think we've gotten the dates right on some of this stuff. And so I sat down with a calendar, and I remember I counted back, and this part gets a little fuzzy, but I remember I counted back about 9 weeks, and I told them, I said, hey, there's not two babies in here. There's just one really big baby in here. And this baby will be born in November, that's my birth month. That's when I was born. And I remember in the dream stopping and kind of turning in and having this moment to myself where I actually said to the Father, thank you. This is such a gift that this baby is going to be born in the same month as me. And I just remember having this moment with the Father and this baby that all three of these things were connected together. And it was such a gift, and it was such a blessing in that moment.
Yeah. Okay. So Courtney, what's the theme in the dream?
You tell me, Matt.
That's not how we do it, Courtney.
Well, obviously babies typically represent something that you are growing and that you're nurturing, and new life. And gifts. Yeah.
I think that's the essence of the dream. And again, when you've had 4 kids of your own, right? And so pregnancy is not something that is a mystery to you. It's something that you've gone, you don't have 4 kids if you actually go, I can actually do this. And congratulations to you guys as well. That's awesome. So the first question I ask when someone says they've had a dream that they're pregnant, I ask them if they are. And
wait a second. I am not pregnant.
Yeah.
I'm not currently pregnant. Don't go sending messages and getting crazy on me, guys. We're good. Let's just make that clear before we go on. You said congratulations, and I was like, hold up. This is going to cause some rapid fire text messages later. Okay, please proceed.
So the question is she pregnant? And she's like, no, I'm not. Okay, so the next thing we do is look for the theme of new life that's flowing in and through her. Twins in dreams and visions usually mean a double portion of life. And for her, she's going to all these authorities and looking for advice, but there's something inside of you, Courtney, which is actually speaking louder than what all the voices of advice are giving to you as well. And so voices of advice are telling you things that just don't make sense. Like, how do you conceive at 2 different times and have 2 different children inside of your body? It just doesn't make sense. And so for you, you're testing it. So inside of your dream space, you're just going, let me just check that. And you start adding it up for yourself to go back to a place to go, no, there is only one, and it's bigger than what you think. Right? And so, Courtney, the concept inside of this vision or this dream for you is that you are carrying new life that will be born in November, probably this year. It will coincide around your own birthday, and it'll be bigger than what you can think. You might think that you're carrying enough for 2 children inside of you, and other people around you are giving you conflicting kinds of advice, but intuitively, you know that the Father has planted something so big and so great inside of you that come this year, this will be a year when new life has been seen in and through you.
Wow. Yes, that definitely rings true in my heart for sure. That is, that's amazing. That's amazing.
See, one of the things inside of this, because I know Courtney and Scott so well, I know their hearts as well. And I know Courtney carries the presence of the kingdom of God so powerfully inside of her as well. And so when we talk about metaphors of new life, some of the new life that's flowing in and through her is actually flooding out. And I'm sure people watching this can actually see it in and through you, Courtney, because there is a purity and openness to the kingdom of God that you carry very powerfully. And when you invite people into it, and like the group that we've run recently there in Oklahoma, your friends come into that place and they come in ready and welcome because they know the safe place that your heart has expressed and opened up. And so it's like that kingdom opening, and then you're releasing the love of the Father through it. So again, when I know a person very well, you can actually connect the context of who you know with the dream that they're having and just go, yeah, I fully get what's happening with Courtney, because new life doesn't stop flowing from her.
Yeah, that's so good. So to stick with our theme of finding the good word, the encouragement, now here comes the time where we look at what the challenge might be for that inside of that dream. And for me, the challenge is always sort of been tuning in and relying first and more heavily upon the voice of the Father that I hear within me. Not that there's not a place or a time for testing or sharing or that space of community, which is highly, highly important. But also when I think of a dream about pregnancy, what I know in my mind is that birth is coming.
Yeah.
And that's a big challenge. It's good, but it's a big challenge.
Yeah.
So when I look at this dream and I hear those things and I receive the encouragement, absolutely. But I also know as I'm seeing this, hold on, because there's some challenging stuff as well coming with nurturing and birthing.
Yeah, saying to any woman that childbirth is easy would be the stupidest thing that you could possibly speak out of your mouth, because I've heard of beautiful births and I've heard of very challenging ones as well. But being from a man's point of view, the last thing I'm going to do is provide commentary on what childbirth should or should not do. I know when my own wife, Trish, we had our first child, Emma, I said to her after the first one, I said, we can just have one. That's traumatic enough for me.
Okay.
So I can't imagine, literally I can't imagine what you guys go through. But the concept of the challenge also inside of that is there's conflicting voices of authority that will try and challenge the concept of the life that you carry. And so it's not to reject those voices, it's to engage with them, to know the truth and to discover the truth. Okay?
Yeah.
So there is a challenge there.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, I think that's about all that we're going to be able to cram into one session today.